I want to share a story. This first story here is something that was sent to me by my friend Sayer G of Green Med Info. This is actually an article he put together, and hopefully we'll have him on the show soon to talk about it. But nevertheless, this is an important one that I'm glad to see after he sent it to me that there's other people talking about it. I'm just now getting back to shows, so I've been on the road. I haven't been able to do a report on this, but thankfully there are some people doing so. So this article is titled Military Intelligence Powers in Life or Death Domestic Scenarios. And this was reported last Monday, October 7th. It says, imagine waking up to discover the U.S. military has been quietly granted the authority to assist in domestic law enforcement activities, including the use of lethal force against U.S. citizens in certain circumstances. Now consider that this change was enacted just weeks before an election already surrounded by concerns of civil unrest, civil liberties, and potential government overreach. This is the reality of DoD Directive 5420.01, which was reissued on September 27, 2024. So he gives a little quick summary of things here. He says, new provisions. This updated directive, which again came from the Department of Defense, expands the circumstances under which the DoD can assist law enforcement, including the use of lethal force. Assassination explicitly forbidden. It says, while assassination is banned, the new language allows for lethal actions under, quote, imminent threats. Concerns about civil liberties. The expanded definition of national security threats is raising alarms, particularly given the DHS's broader definition of domestic terrorism threats. High-level approval required. Any intelligence sharing that could lead to lethal force must be approved by the Secretary of Defense, but component heads can act immediately for up to 72 hours before obtaining approval. And that's pretty much it. So, I mean, that's like the main thing. We're going to go through a little more depth, but it's a DoD directive. So this isn't something that's been signed by the president or issued executive order, something like that. This is just a directive from the Department of Defense. Now we can get into, and I think he might touch on this a little bit, about what does a DoD directive mean legally, right? I mean, many of you out there understand there are things that are quote unquote legal, but not necessarily lawful or just or moral. And I tend to think that statutes and codes, things like that, are actually, they're not laws. And so where do they come from? Do they really apply to us? And I've had some luck pushing back against those things over the years. So I have similar concerns about a DoD directive. Okay, the DoD is part of the U.S. federal government. They think they own you. So sure, they probably think that anything that the DoD pumps out their butt has to have legal backing, and you're supposed to automatically be subjected to it. But let's get into it. It says, a concerning update to DoD Directive 5420.01 has been quietly put into effect. It was reissued September 27th, and this directive governs the DoD intelligence activities and now includes provisions authorizing legal force. While the directive forbids assassination, it opens the door to lethal interventions under national security conditions, albeit with stringent restrictions on how such interventions are to be authorized. This directive, reissued under the authority of the Secretary of Defense, as per standard Department of Defense procedures, carries significant weight in shaping military operations and intelligence activities. While the DoD directives are typically internal police policy documents, the implications of this update extend far beyond the walls of the Pentagon, including potentially affecting civilian life and constitutional rights. So right here, we'll just go a little further into it. And again, the document is linked in here. You can see a screenshot here, and you can actually, there's a link to it on the DoD website. So you don't have to trust his word or my word. A quiet update with loud implications. The reissuance of this directive repealed previous versions. While the update might seem routine, the changes regarding the use of lethal force in domestic operations are significant. In the 2016 version, the directive primarily focused on intelligence collection and ensuring that civil liberties protections for U.S. persons continued. It emphasized strict oversight and the need for authorization before collecting U.S. persons' information. However, the 2024 version expands the military's role, particularly in assisting civilian law enforcement, and authorizes lethal force under specific conditions, raising questions about its use during potential civil unrest surrounding the upcoming U.S. election. And then he does a good part, kind of like what I was just doing with the Summit of the Future, showing what it looked like before and what has changed, and how he shows how the 2016 version, there was discussions about civil liberties protections and intelligence collection restrictions, and now those things have been changed, and now it says use of lethal force, conditions for force, legal oversight, and it says any use of force must comply with this other DoD directive, ensuring proper legal frameworks are followed. Of course, yeah, right. So it says framing the 2024 directive as a restriction, not an expansion. It goes on. The 72-hour provision, a time-sensitive response mechanism, why timing matters, and he goes into why this might relate to the U.S. election, the civil liberties concerns, how this could impact the right to protest, privacy rights, due process, freedom of speech, and civilian control, which we could see taken away if the things are further militarized. So this is, I think, overall just a kind of one more piece in the puzzle of a big shift towards militarizing the United States. And we've seen violations of posse comitatus and various, U.S. government documents discussing that so-called sovereign citizens or libertarians or people who use gold or don't trust the federal government are dangerous and things like that. So it's not that it's not that new of a discovery, let's say. I think it's still a big deal. But is this the first time we've heard this happen? No, unfortunately not. That's very sad to say, but no, this is not the first time we've seen this happen. We've seen the U.S. government target their own citizens or put out language making it seem like they are interested in targeting their own people numerous times, and this trend just continues. Now, I definitely do think that the U.S. election, as I warned in 2020, is going to be a great time for some type of false flag. It seems almost kind of cliche to predict that, and maybe it's too obvious. I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying I do think whether on election day or like we saw last time in the lead up to certification, January, whatever it's going to be, January 6th, there might be some chaos and some purposely stoked chaos and unrest, because we have hit that point where neither side that are caught up in the false left-right paradigm, including those of you who think you are freedom fighters and awake, who are still falling for Trump, are willing to accept that they have lost. Like it's already primed for them, the left, to claim that Trump is, stole the election with the Russians, and Trump has already been ceding that they're going to steal the election again, right? So I don't expect things to go smoothly. So the U.S. elections are a prime time to divide people. And if that means civil unrest and something like this DOD directive, it's back there. It exists like a lot of other directives and executive orders and signing statements and all the other stuff that the government uses, which are totally not legal and not voted on and all kinds of things. Fun stuff. They have the tools if they want to use them, is my point. So we'll see where that goes.
Since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.